3 weeks after Labour won the 1997 general election, we pledged that Britain would meet the UN target to spend 0.7% of our gross national income on international development. And it's one of the acts of which I am most proud of our time in office. Nor do I deny the important role both the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives have played in ensuring that this has become a cross-party national commitment, one which only a handful of countries in the world have met. But none of us who support international aid believe we are writing DFID a blank cheque. We must always ensure that aid meets 3 tests. It must be effective, transparent and reflect our country's values. In the case of the aid which we give to the Palestinian Authority, we're failing those 3 tests. Let me give one example, the issue of the PA's payments to convicted Palestinian terrorists. Convicted terrorists, including, we must assume, Talab Mehamara, the uncle of the Sarona market murderers, a member of a terror cell that in 2002 targeted Israelis, killing 4 in a shooting attack. These are not, as one DFID minister claimed in 2012, social assistance programmes to provide welfare payments. Instead, by operating a perverse sliding scale where you receive more money the longer the sentence you receive, in some cases as much as 5 times the average monthly wage in Ramallah, they actually incentivise people to commit the most terrible acts of violence. I simply don't see how that advances the cause of a 2-state solution. And what is the government doing about it? Last month, Palestinian Media Watch showed how the PA sought to deceive international donors, shutting the Ministry of Prisoners' Affairs and claiming that the PLO would assume responsibility for these payments. But this was merely a financial sleight of hand. I will.
I've had these discussions with the Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority and the Finance Minister and with other officials, and I continue to make the point that she's rightly made, that if these are welfare payments, they must be made like welfare payments. But the reality is that we do not pay them. Our taxpayers' money goes to build the Palestinian Authority so that it is able to morph into the government of a Palestinian state when that opportunity arises, and we pay named civil servants for the provision of public services.
I think the Minister understands the point I'm making and wilfully will not look at this. In fact, the payments we make enable the Palestinian Authority to make their payments to prisoners. In 2015, the PA raised its annual transfer to the PLO via the Palestinian National Fund to 481 million shekels, the amount it needed to fund the newly created PLO Commission on Prisoners' Affairs, and an amount virtually identical to the budget of the old PA Ministry of Prison Affairs, the point I am making to the Minister. I wrote to ministers last month demanding direct aid to the PA be suspended whilst these serious allegations were investigated. In response, I've been told by ministers that the Palestinian Ministry of Affairs has confirmed to DFID, and we've heard this again today, that prisoner payments are fully administered by the PLO. With respect, I urge ministers to dig a little deeper. It's the source of the money, not who's doling it out, that they should be asking questions about. I will.
My friend, I'd just like to ask her 2 questions, if I may. The first thing is she saying that aid to the Palestinian Authority should be suspended? How she responds to the passage in the report the Honourable Gentleman opposite said, who said, to the extent the collapse of the PA or the Palestinian economy would massively increase unemployment, this would raise the chances of a violent escalation. And the second question I have to her, is she saying that every prisoner, a Palestinian prisoner, in Israeli custody is a terrorist?
Well, on his second point, I have not said that. He has just said that, not me. And on his first point, I think, as we've said, the tests for aid are very important if there's to be public confidence in where this aid goes to. And I think it is important that the aid is suspended subject to an inquiry, which could happen very quickly. I am not in any way against giving aid to Palestinians as long as it is spent in the right way. I will.
I'm very grateful, and she's making a powerful speech. Would she agree with me that one of the ways forward in this debate on how DFID aid is spent in Israel and Palestine would be for more and increased spending on people-to-people coexistence policies, and that would help with this debate.
I absolutely agree. And can I just say I'm not going to now take any more interventions as I want to finish my remarks. And I think my honourable friend makes a very valuable point. Indeed, repeated warnings have been ignored. The DFID Select Committee suggested nearly 2 years ago, for instance, there is a real risk that the payment of UK aid to the PA in this fashion simply enables it to release alternative funds which allow payments to convicted terrorists to continue, the very point I am making. And while our aid potentially helps line the pockets of the men of violence, we are providing pitiable support to the kind of coexistence projects which actually bring Israelis and Palestinians together, as my honourable friend intervened to say. I have written to the Secretary of State listing a number of coexistence projects which enable Palestinians and Israelis to work together, demonstrating what they have in common and not what divides them. Indeed, I have calculated that less than 13% of the £1.14 million from the government's Conflict, Stability and Security Fund spent in Israel and the Palestinian territories goes to fund coexistence projects. That represents a mere 0.2% of the roughly £72 million DFID spends in the Palestinian territories. Britain can and must help work towards an independent, democratic Palestinian state, living alongside an Israel safe and secure within recognised borders. At the moment, I fear our aid to the Palestinian Authority might actually be taking us further away from that goal, which is why, as I have previously argued, we urgently need an independent inquiry and a radical rethink.
Fiona Bruce.